Welcome to week 2 of GE 3510 Macroeconomics. Remember that the contact information is up top if there are any questions with the name, phone number, and email address. Best way to contact typically is by email, listing a few times that we can then meet by phone and or screen share software. Scrolling down to the current week we are in, week 2. We're going to have a familiar layout. We have the objectives, the topics, and the lessons. We're going to be working on 3 chapters here within the lessons, chapters 2, 14, and 15. As will be normally the case, we will have a topic related to both micro and macroeconomic topics, a baseline topic for all of economics, and then move on to more macroeconomic topics. That baseline topic this time being comparative advantage. Comparative advantage being a fundamental principle that really outlines why we usually are better off through trade. So both parties typically are better off through trade, and comparative advantage will give an example and the reasoning for that perspective. And that perspective is going to be very important when we move to macroeconomic topics and think about trading with other economies. Then we've got the chapter 17, we've got the public goods and tax policy. This is going to get into a clearly macroeconomic topic. When we think about macroeconomic topics, we're thinking about the environment, how to set the rules up, and that's going to be dealing with public policy. So that, of course, will be topics that we probably hear about or have some touch line or basis on, because these are going to be the public policy type of issues, including the tax policy. So we'll give some reasons and some reasoning behind the tax policy. Public goods has a very specific type of meaning for economics. So when you see that term public goods in terms of an economic term, we want to be able to define that specifically. And it's one of the areas where the market kind of breaks down. The supply and demand has some problems and may not result in an optimal outcome due to the characteristics of public goods in a particular area. So you want to look at those. Those are going to be some key areas where the most interesting places are, because there's disagreement. Then we have spending, income, and GDP. Once again, GDP being kind of like the income statement, the performance kind of number for the economy. We typically want that to be growing as we go. So we have then here everything we need to get done from the discussion forum on down. Discussion forum's worth 21% of the grade. Want to make sure to pick up as many points as possible. I suggest trying to pick up 100% of that 21%. This is not the area where you want to get like a 70 and then try to pick up the points somewhere else. You want to pick up full credit on the discussion forums so that when you go into areas where you have less control, such as the quizzes, you have as many points as possible with those. So in order to do that, you want to have at least 4 posts. I would post more than 4 times. 4 is the minimum. You can get there in the minimum if they're all really good posts, but if you have less than great posts, then you may not get there with the minimum of 4 posts. In order to pick up the most points, you have to add new content to the discussion forum that is relative to economics. If you copy and paste anything, remember to reference it. So copy and paste the reference. And if you want to pick up full credit on a particular post that you have copied and pasted, then you also need to paraphrase it in your own words and or critique it. Remember, we are dealing with issues that are highly debated oftentimes, even in the world of economics. So we want to debate them using economic terms and the terminology and the framework of economics. So then we've got the assignments, projects, homework, and quizzes. Most of this will be done in McGraw-Hill's Connect, but although most of it will be done in McGraw-Hill's Connect, it will not be all listed in McGraw-Hill's Connect. And although most of it is not done down here in Moodle Rooms, it is all listed here in Moodle Rooms. Therefore, this is where you want to check everything off. Just check everything off in Moodle Rooms. Make sure you don't miss anything. For example, this homework down here is something that you're going to have to do in Moodle Rooms. Turn it in Moodle Rooms. Don't miss it. If you missed it last week, you might want to go back and see if you can pick it up for late work. Then we got the quiz. The quiz, we typically have less leeway for late work on quizzes. Therefore, make sure to take the quiz by the end of the week, by Sunday. If you run into a time constraint, take the quiz. Any points are better than no points. A 10% is better than a 0%. If you have to go back and pick up late work, we typically have more late work on the homework and assignments. Note that you will lose points in accordance with Charter College policy. Scrolling up to the grade book up here on the left side, note that all grades are going to be in and or due. I mean, everything is due in terms of work, should say, on Sunday. And then I have until Wednesday to enter the grades. I try to get the grades in there around Tuesday around noon. Make sure to go in there Tuesday around noon, check the grade book. You should have an idea of what that grade book should look like. given the fact that you're checking everything off as you go. Once it's updated, let me know if there are any questions. And if anything changes from a dash to a 0, that's an indication that it has not yet been done, and you want to consider whether it can be done for late work. That's going to be it for week 2, so have a great week 2.